V. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to lean in today. I want you to lock in, because what you are about to hear is not just another motivational message. It's a spiritual wake-up call. You've been told life is a game, a journey, a grind. But let me tell you today, life is a battle, and not just any battle. It's a war that isn't fought with fists or firepower, but with your spirit. And here's the truth that shakes the foundations of the seen and the unseen. Your spirit activates spiritual warfare. The moment you decide to live by the Spirit and not by the flesh, the moment you say, I will not bow to fear, to doubt, to compromise, that's the moment the unseen war begins to rage. That's the moment heaven pays attention and hell gets nervous. You see, the devil doesn't fear your talent, your looks, or your bank account. He fears your spirit awakened, engaged, and fully surrendered to the authority of the Most High. Because your spirit, when aligned with divine power, becomes a weapon of mass destruction against the kingdom of darkness. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that what they carry within is far more powerful than what they're facing outside. That moment isn't born out of comfort. It's born in the fire. It's in the struggle, the setback, the silence, the rejection, the loneliness, the spiritual confusion, the weariness that won't shake loose. That's when the truth starts to reveal itself. Not about your situation, but about your spirit. And here it is. Your spirit is not your weakness. It is your weapon. You've been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too spiritual, too soft-hearted, too different. But the very things people said would hold you back are the things God intends to use to push you forward. The enemy doesn't fear people who live in the flesh. He fears people who walk in the Spirit. He fears those who tap into the invisible realm, who know how to pray without needing a crowd, who know how to fight without throwing hands, who know how to stand even when their knees are shaking. Because the real war isn't in the physical, it's in the spiritual. And when your spirit rises up, hell has to take a step back. The world will train you to depend on your appearance, your status, your money, your intellect, but those things don't carry real power in the battles that matter. Demons aren't cast out by charm. Generational curses aren't broken by titles. Depression isn't shaken by popularity. Addiction isn't conquered by likes and comments. When it gets real, when it gets raw, when you're fighting for your mind, your family, your future, you don't need surface-level strength. You need a spirit that's been through the fire and didn't burn out. You need a spirit that's trained, tested, and unshaken. Let's get one thing clear. If you're feeling the weight, the resistance, the fight, it's not a sign you're weak. It's a sign you're armed. The enemy doesn't bother with people who pose no threat. He doesn't launch attacks on what isn't a problem. So if you're catching pressure, spiritual opposition, emotional warfare, you better recognize it for what it is. Evidence that your spirit is rising, that your presence is disruptive, that your voice is dangerous, that your calling is not casual. See, your spirit is the part of you that can't be manipulated. It can't be silenced by fear. It can't be bought with comfort. And it can't be measured by man. It's the eternal breath of God inside you. And when you let it lead, when you let it burn, when you let it speak, it releases power that you didn't even know you carried. The kind of power that breaks chains in silence. The kind of power that shifts rooms when you walk in. The kind of power that doesn't need validation because it's already backed by heaven. So many people walk around defeated because they've been conditioned to fight with their feelings, with their fists, or with their logic. But when your spirit leads, you fight on another level. You don't fight for revenge, you fight for restoration. You don't fight out of fear, you fight from identity. You don't fight to survive, you fight because you were born to win. That's what makes your spirit your greatest weapon. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to blaze trails. You were never meant to shrink. You were meant to shake systems. You were never meant to rely on external strength. You were designed to rise from within. Your power isn't in the noise you make. It's in the atmosphere you shift when your spirit comes alive. And if the battle around you has intensified, it's because your spirit has awakened something in the realm that can't be ignored anymore. You don't accidentally step into spiritual warfare. It's triggered the moment you make a decision to rise higher. The second you make a choice to stop living according to the pattern of this world and begin walking in spiritual alignment, everything shifts. You might not see it, but the realm around you responds. That's why it often feels like all hell breaks loose right after you try to do right. That's not random. That's not bad luck. That's not just life being life. That's warfare being activated. Make no mistake, when you start choosing purity over compromise, discipline over distraction, and obedience over opinion, it sends a signal into the unseen realm. Darkness doesn't move when you play church. It moves when your life starts becoming a reflection of what you believe. When you're no longer just saying you're about change, but you're living it day by day, hell takes notice. Because spiritual warfare isn't about spooky images or dramatic experiences. It's the invisible resistance that comes the moment you begin to align with truth. The enemy is perfectly fine with you staying comfortable, coasting, playing small, and blending in. But the moment you choose growth over comfort, freedom over cycles, and purpose over popularity, a line gets drawn in the sand. That line marks the place where your flesh ends and your spirit begins to lead. That's the moment the real battle begins. That's when the pushback starts. Why? Because you're not just existing anymore, you're advancing. You're no longer just surviving, you're taking territory. And when you take territory, you threaten strongholds. Have you ever wondered why life feels heavier when you start praying more consistently? Why temptation increases the moment you decide to fast? Why discouragement creeps in just as you begin stepping into your assignment? It's not because you're failing, it's because you're fighting. It's because your spiritual choices are colliding with the darkness that used to control you. And the resistance you're feeling is not a sign to stop. It's confirmation that you're exactly where you need to be. See, warfare doesn't come when you're moving with the flow. It comes when you interrupt the flow. When you refuse to be who you used to be. When you refuse to go back to the version of yourself that tolerated nonsense, lived in fear, and stayed silent when you should have spoken up. When you declare enough is enough, and start living like someone who knows their identity. That's when the enemy gets rattled, because he's not intimidated by your potential. He's terrified of your obedience. The devil knows he can't destroy you, so he tries to distract you. He tries to derail your progress with sudden attacks, subtle lies, and emotional instability. He wants you confused, questioning your path, doubting your worth, feeling like your decisions to grow have made life worse. But if you understand that the warfare is not proof of failure, but proof of faithfulness, everything changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start saying, this means I'm moving something in the spirit. Choosing to live right is not glamorous, it's gritty. It's costly. It requires dying to ego, to comfort, to habits you used to hide behind. But every time you choose obedience, you are slamming a door the enemy used to freely walk through. You are tearing down altars that were built in secret. You are raising a new standard, not just for you, but for your children, your home, your legacy. And yes, it might feel like you're losing something, but what you're gaining can't be measured in the natural. This is the unseen price of transformation. The more you align with the Spirit, the more you'll be tested in it. The moment you decide to walk differently, talk differently, love differently, forgive differently, that's when you enter a battleground you never saw before. Because now you're not just trying to change your life, you're disrupting the enemy's territory. You're shaking foundations that were built to hold you back. You're walking in truth, and truth always provokes war. Too many people are fighting battles already won. Too many are wearing themselves out swinging at shadows, wrestling with guilt, fear, anxiety, and shame, trying to earn a victory that's already been declared. And that's exactly where the enemy wants you, exhausted, confused, and unaware of the authority you already possess. Because when you don't know you're victorious, you live like you're defeated. When you don't understand your position, you'll keep begging for what's already yours. But when you finally realize you're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from it, your entire posture changes. That's the mindset the enemy fears. The believer who stands not shaking, not second-guessing, not wondering if God is with them, but the one who knows that the cross already broke the curse, that the resurrection already crushed the grave, and that authority has already been handed over. That person doesn't beg. They command. That person doesn't panic. They declare. That person doesn't bow to fear. They advance in faith. Because when you know the war is already won, the battle in front of you becomes a formality, not a finality. What if you stopped living like you're chasing victory and started living like you're enforcing it? Because that's what spiritual warfare really is. Enforcing a victory that's already been secured. You're not trying to win healing, peace, freedom, or purpose. You already have the promise. Now you walk it out. Now you protect it. Now you activate it. Every lie the enemy throws your way is a desperate attempt to get you to forfeit what already belongs to you. He can't steal your crown, so he tries to convince you that you never had one. When you're fighting from victory, you don't fight emotionally, you fight spiritually. You don't let your feelings dictate your faith. You let your faith dominate your feelings. You don't let circumstances tell you how powerful God is. You let the truth of God tell your circumstances how small they really are. You walk with a different kind of confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but spiritual assurance that you are standing on a foundation that cannot be shaken. And it's not because of you. It's not because you're strong enough, wise enough, holy enough, or perfect enough. It's because of what's already been done. The price was paid. The chains were broken. The keys were taken back. And you're walking in the power of that finished work. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your status, not your title, not your talents, but your alignment with a battle-tested, blood-covered victory that can't be reversed. When you pray, you're not just tossing up hopes, you're making declarations based on promises that have already been sealed. When you worship, you're not just lifting your hands, you're reminding hell of its defeat. When you resist temptation, you're not just trying to be good, you're walking like someone who's already free. That mindset flips everything. Because now, instead of pleading for peace, you walk like someone who carries it. Instead of striving for breakthrough, you speak like someone who owns it. And yes, the enemy will still try to fight. He'll try to whisper lies, stir up confusion, trigger your past, and bait your emotions. But now you fight differently. You don't fight to survive, you fight to establish the authority that's already been given. You don't wait for things to shift. You speak as if they already have. Because spiritual warfare, when you're fighting from victory, is no longer about trying to win. It's about refusing to lose what was already secured at the highest cost. So don't step into battle hoping for a win. Step in knowing you are the evidence of victory already won. Let that fire fuel your prayers. Let that truth straighten your spine. Let that confidence silence the voice of defeat that tries to make you forget who you are and whose side you're on. The throne hasn't moved. The crown hasn't slipped. The victory hasn't changed. It's already finished. Now walk like it. Speak like it. Fight like it. Every time you take a step in faith, something shifts, whether you feel it or not, whether anyone else sees it or not. Heaven moves and hell trembles. Because real spiritual warfare isn't always loud and explosive. It's subtle, consistent, relentless obedience in the face of resistance. And every act of faith, no matter how small it seems in the moment, is a strike against darkness. You may not always recognize the impact of your actions, but in the unseen realm, chains are breaking, walls are falling, and strongholds are weakening. That's why the enemy fights so hard to keep you quiet, distracted, and doubtful. Because he knows your faith is a weapon that wrecks his territory. It's not about shouting louder. It's not about having the most followers, the biggest platform, or the perfect words. It's about the person who keeps showing up. The one who keeps praying when nothing changes. The one who keeps worshiping through the tears. The one who keeps declaring truth in the face of lies. That person isn't weak. They're dangerous. That person is swinging a sword every time they choose faith over fear. And the enemy knows it. Faith is not a feeling, it's a posture. It's waking up and choosing to believe when everything in your life gives you a reason to quit. It's showing up in prayer when your heart is heavy. It's giving when you feel empty. It's forgiving when you'd rather retaliate. It's speaking peace in the middle of chaos. That's warfare. That's disruption. That's how you snatch back ground the enemy thought he owned. You don't need to announce your faith to prove it's real. Hell already knows when someone's walking in authority. Hell can sense when someone is spiritually alert and anchored. The quiet obedience of a surrendered believer does more damage to darkness than all the noise of an unrooted one. Because real power isn't always public, it's often hidden in the private places where choices are made, where discipline is forged, and where character is tested. Every time you choose to love someone who wounded you, you break a chain. Every time you speak life over yourself when your thoughts try to drag you into despair, you push back darkness. Every time you walk in integrity when it would be easier to compromise, you drive a wedge into the enemy's plans. These moments don't always come with fireworks or applause, but they are warfare. They are victories. They are fire starter moments that the devil can't extinguish. And what makes it even more powerful is that you're not doing it alone. The Spirit of God backs every step of faith with heavenly force. You're not just resisting the devil in your own strength. You are activating a chain reaction in the supernatural. You are aligning yourself with divine authority that has never lost a battle. And when heaven moves through your faith, the results are unstoppable, even when they take time to manifest. The enemy wants to make you believe that your acts of faith are ineffective. He wants you to think your prayers aren't heard, your words don't matter, your progress is too slow. But that's because he knows if you ever realize how powerful those small, consistent steps are, you'll become relentless. You'll become bold. You'll keep swinging even when your arms are tired, because you'll know every hit counts. Every prayer is a push. Every word is a strike. Every decision to stay in alignment is a knock at the gates of hell that says, you won't win here. So don't downplay your progress. Don't minimize your obedience. Don't dismiss the power of a whispered prayer, a midnight worship song, or a quiet moment of surrender. Those are the moments that terrify the enemy. Because every time you step forward in faith, something in the atmosphere shatters. Something in the darkness loses ground. And something in your spirit grows stronger, louder, bolder. That's the real fight. The one you win, not with noise, but with faith in motion. There is a moment in your spiritual walk where everything starts to change, not because your situation shifts, but because your identity becomes unshakable. That moment isn't about outward success or recognition. It's about revelation. When you finally understand who you are in the Spirit, the battle takes on a whole new dimension. You stop fighting like a victim. You start moving like someone who carries the authority of heaven. You begin to realize that you're not just saved, you're sealed. You're not just forgiven, you're commissioned. You're not just attending spiritual warfare, you're leading it by the weight of your identity. The enemy thrives on spiritual amnesia. If he can make you forget who you are, He can manipulate you with lies, fear, and doubt. He'll try to convince you that you're powerless, unworthy, ineffective, broken beyond repair. He'll magnify your past to minimize your present. But when you step into the truth of your identity, when you start living from the reality that you are chosen, equipped, and called, you move differently. You stop bowing to pressure and start standing in position. You stop running from attacks and start responding with authority. Identity is the anchor in warfare. It's the reason some people crumble under pressure while others rise in power. Because when you know you're a child of the King, you stop negotiating with enemies who have already been defeated. When you know you're seated in heavenly places, you stop being shaken by temporary storms. When you know you carry the Spirit of the living God, you stop second-guessing your place on the battlefield. The moment you accept who you are spiritually, the fight starts bending in your favor, not because the attacks stop, but because you stop fighting in your flesh. The enemy doesn't fear you when you're confused. He fears you when you're clear. He fears the moment you wake up and say, I know who I am. Because a clear identity means a focused purpose. And focused people are a problem. You begin to realize that your pain was preparation, that your tears were training, and that your wilderness wasn't punishment. It was preparation for war. You don't just survive it. You get sharpened by it. You walk out of it with fire in your spirit and power in your voice. You stop entertaining things that once distracted you. You stop needing the approval of people who never understood your calling. You stop trying to explain your growth to people still comfortable in bondage. Because when you know who you are, you no longer need validation. You walk in divine verification. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that can't contain your purpose. You stop apologizing for your authority. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in the dark. This is what shifts the battlefield. Not louder prayers or longer fasts, but clarity of identity. The confidence that you were created for impact, destined for influence, and born to disrupt darkness. You no longer just carry the title of Christian, you become a warrior in the Spirit. You wake up with purpose, move with intention, and fight with precision. The enemy may still attack, but he loses his grip because he can't manipulate someone who knows their place in the kingdom. And make no mistake, your identity in the Spirit is not a passive label. It's a call to action. It means you step into rooms differently. You face trials with boldness. You pray with certainty. You expect breakthrough because you belong to the one who breaks through. You carry solutions, not confusion. You carry peace, not panic. You don't just attend the fight, you bring the victory with you. So the next time the enemy whispers that you're weak, remind him that you've been marked by the Most High. The next time fear rises, let your identity speak louder, because your warfare changes the moment you know who you are. You're not on the field to survive. You're here to shift atmospheres. You're not chasing victory. You're walking in inheritance. The battlefield looks different when you step into it as a son, as a daughter, as anointed, as assigned. The war doesn't end, but your posture changes everything. There is a war being fought right now, not on your screen, not in your neighborhood, but deep within the unseen realm. And while many are walking through life asleep to this reality, unaware of the fight that surrounds them, there are a few who are fully awake, a few who understand that passivity in the Spirit is the perfect breeding ground for defeat. Because passive spirits lose battles, but engaged spirits win wars. The difference between being overwhelmed and overcoming isn't always about strength. It's about spiritual engagement. The enemy thrives in your passivity. He gains territory when your spirit goes silent. He moves through the cracks you ignore, the wounds you avoid, the patterns you excuse, and the moments you stay spiritually neutral. And neutrality in a war zone is surrender. There's no such thing as standing still in the spirit. You're either advancing or retreating. When your spirit is disengaged, the battle rages around you without your participation, and you become a casualty of wars you were called to win. But when your spirit becomes engaged, everything changes. You start seeing with spiritual eyes. You discern more than what's said. You perceive what's behind it. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop being tossed by circumstances and start standing in spiritual strategy. That's what happens when your spirit is no longer passive. You become intentional. You become watchful. You become dangerous. Because now you're fighting with clarity. You're no longer guessing. You're guarding. You're no longer ignoring. You're interceding. Engagement means you don't just go to church. You are the church. You don't just read scripture, you wield it. You don't just know how to pray. You know how to war in prayer. When your spirit is awake, you stop tolerating the enemy's lies. You stop allowing generational patterns to cycle through your family unchecked. You stop being the one always under spiritual attack and start becoming the one launching spiritual counterattacks. You become the one who declares, "This ends with me," and means it. And that doesn't mean being loud or emotional. Engagement doesn't always look like shouting. It looks like showing up. It looks like fasting.